Hey, everybody, and happy Thursday to you. Trey Griggs here, founder and CEO of Beta Consulting Group, and your host for another episode of Standing Out, episode 230 today. It's a Thursday. Hope the freight is flowing. Maybe the cigars are smoking and you are having a wonderful day. Only one more day this week. As a reminder, tomorrow is Finish Strong Friday. So, of course, whatever you're doing, get after it. Make sure you finish really strong. Get that weekend off to a great start. Steak's going to taste better if you work hard tomorrow. So make sure you get after it tomorrow and finish strong. Plus, at noon Central, make sure you come by for another episode of Word on the Street. We're going to have my good friend Dan Lindsay of Linkage Logistics on the show to talk about a new event that's coming up. Love for you to hear about that. So again, noon Central, make sure you come by and check that out. We're going to have the street crew in effect, including my man, Jeff Dickinson, the Bodacious Cowboy, who is here in the room. What's up, my man? Let's go. Good to see you as always. And we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, SPI Logistics. Listen, SPI is a leading logistics firm in North America with a respected network of over 65 offices, about 60,000 carriers throughout Canada, the United States. Listen, if you're a freight broker, if you're needing some back office support, such as admin, finance, IT, sales, whatever it is, SPI, they've got the technology systems and back office to support you and help you succeed. So check them out at success.spi3pl.com, especially if you're thinking about going out on your own. I know a lot of friends who are thinking about doing their own thing. If you want to be a freight agent and just sell freight and all that, SPI is the group to call. So give them a call or reach out online today. All right, everybody. Our guest today, super excited about having him on the show. We've been what we call LinkedIn comment friends for a long time, but today we actually get to have him on the show. Everybody give it up for my good friend from the JOC, Eric Johnson. Good music here. This is good music. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Trey. It feels like we've been trying to make this work for a long time, so it's super exciting.
I know. We finally made it happen. A little Van Halen. Listen, I'm excited because I never know what guests are going to choose for their walk-up song. Sometimes they're interesting, but that's a good one. I like that. That's the first Van Halen walk-up song we've had.
So, yeah, I tried to find a deep cut, too, not 1984 or something. So, yeah, they were the first band that, I felt like I was kind of somewhat halfway cool that I started listening. It was moving
nice.
from, kiddie pop stuff when you're, 10 or 11 to real stuff.
Okay, what year was this Van Halen concert? When did you go to this?
I was too young to go to their concerts, at least when David Lee Roth. I only saw them when they had Sammy Hagar. So I was born in 76. That album probably came out in 82, 83. But I got turned on to it when I was 80, in 89. 80.
Well, it's quality music either way. So well done on the walk-up song. That's for sure. Now, you are one of the senior editors over at the JOC, focusing specifically on technology, logistics technology. How'd you get that gig, and how long have you been, into logistics tech? Talk about your journey into that position.
Yeah, so started with the JOC and just 5 years. It's almost exactly 5 years to the day.
Really? Okay.
I have been writing about logistics since 2003. So coming up on 20 full years, which seems totally insane. Probably explains the lack of Eric here.
Yeah, you and me both. It just keeps going back.
I used to show up at meetings Port Harbor Commission meetings 20 years ago with shoulder length hair.
Really? Oh, we need to see pictures of that.
Oddball, out of place. Who's this kid? And now I'm just the normal old looking guy who's grizzled.
You used to have the long hair, the Hanson hair,
It was pretty long. It was pretty long.
Oh, wow.
It was probably too long. It was probably too long. So yeah, I started off. I've been a journalist my whole career. Got a chance to write about business journalism for a while and had no intention of going into it, but loved it straight away. And I got hired by a newspaper in Southern California, where I'm from originally. And the opening on the desk was covering the ports of LA and Long Beach. This was in 2003. So thrown into the deep end, crazy stuff going on there. That was right when trade started really going crazy with China. So there was huge amounts of volume. ILWU, there was labor disputes going on back then, just like there is right now. So we had this huge learning curve straight away, but realized I loved it straight away.
That's awesome.
And then from there, went to another trade pub, and then got hired by the JOC 5 years ago. So
that's cool. That's cool. And Jeff Dickinson is taking shots, saying he remembers when you had hair. So you guys know each other for a while. So Kind of go back. How did you get, how'd you get an understanding of the ports? Did you literally go down to the ports and just like live there for a while? I mean, really kind of dig into it, or how did you get familiar with that?
Yeah, I mean, this was 2002. It's hard to go back. 2003. Sorry, it's hard to go back and think like everything wasn't available on the internet like it is now.
Right.
I mean, the internet was like 7, 8, 9
It
years
was
old
new.
at that point.
Let's just say it was
It
new.
was it was there, but yeah, right. It was very, let's be diplomatic and call it immature at that point.
Yes.
You literally had to go out and like talk to people and knock on people's doors and go to go and meet with terminal operators and go to the ILWU like halls where those guys would get assignments on which terminal they were going to go to. So meet truckers servicing the port at their favorite like restaurant that they used to stop at. That kind of stuff. I'm not sure how much of that still goes on, honestly, but because it's super easy to just connect with people in a million different ways. But yeah, that's how we used to do it. There used to be this thing in Southern California called the Thomas Brothers Guide, which was a map book that was about that thick, spiral bound. Anyone from LA will remember these. And you used to find your street address by looking for it in the index at the back, and it had a quadrant.
Page, like D6, and
and you would go down to be like, oh, I got to take this freeway to this, and then you had no idea if there's traffic.
We're so dating ourselves here.
Oh my god, it's crazy. When I think about what I went through just to get like an interview, it's nuts.
Yeah, I mean the internet in 2003, like you would use the internet just to look up the address because you were done with the white pages. Like it was just converting the white pages online. That's really what it was. And anything else was kind of sketchy. I remember I got married in 05. Funny side story. I got married in 05 and I found our honeymoon place online. And I literally called the place and I'm like, listen, I'm bringing my new bride here. Is this place legit? Because you didn't know. You didn't know, right? I mean,
I got married in 05 too. So
oh, nice. What's your anniversary day?
December 23rd.
You better know this. December what?
December 23rd.
Oh, you guys wrecked Christmas. That's what you did. You wrecked it.
Yeah, I know. You
got a lot of presents that year, maybe, or maybe you got kind of scammed out of the Christmas.
My wife's from India. We got married in India, and
okay.
Auspicious. That was an auspicious date, and it was a time of year where people could travel because they were on holiday.
That's true. Break. That's true. Yeah.
So,
okay. So it was a travel wedding. Okay, that's different. That's a little bit better.
Yeah, it was
a little better. That's cool.
But we didn't purposely try to be like screw ourselves out of Christmas gifts. So
you just got Christmas when you got back in January. That's kind of how that worked out. No, that's a great story. Just hearing about going, going door to door essentially and learning about the ports. Hanging out in there, which seems like probably a pretty enjoyable job at the time. I can see how that would be pretty exciting and kind of under the table. It still is a little under the table, although ports certainly have come to the forefront with COVID. But back then it'd probably be like, I mean, who are you writing for? I mean.
Well, it's interesting you asked that because back then my job was to tell someone who had no idea what logistics and goods movement were, what was going on in these like weird cranes that stick up, why that and why the truck traffic on their highway, why it mattered to them from an economic perspective. They didn't care. I didn't even get into like why supply chains matter to like what you buy. It was more like that thing that looks really weird over there is a huge revenue driver for the city, and it enables you to buy all, the city to give you all this other stuff. So it was much more about that. And then when I got into the industry side of things, everything flipped, and it was like, I need to explain to you, why, it was all about like strategy, but you're writing to an audience that knows things better than you do. Right. So everything changed. The reason why you do it, how difficult it was, the bar was really raised.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. And then you transitioned to more of focusing on technology recently. In fact, you have a show twice a month called LogTech Live, and you have some prominent tech leaders on to talk about that. Talk about the evolution of that and getting into specifically focusing on LogTech.
Yeah. So it's not that recently anymore, actually. I used to say that I was recently into the tech, but I probably started covering tech full time in like 2010, 2011. Basically, the magazine I used to work for before, called American Shipper, we got a lot of ad revenue from ocean carriers at that point. This was 2008, 2009. Ocean carriers used to put big full page ads in our physical magazine. Then we all know what happened in 2008, 2009. Suddenly, a lot of that revenue dried up. But who was actually buying advertisements back then was software companies. So our publisher at the time was like, look, I want you to write about tech. You don't have to write about the company. I don't want you to think you have to write about the companies that are sponsoring us, but we need to like write about software all the time. We can't just write about it once a year and in a special report about software. So that's how I mean, it literally, both my entry into logistics and my entry into tech were just sort of like
accidents, kind of
total
yeah.
accidents. Yeah.
Market driven in many ways.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. It's true. And
Yeah.
it just so happens that I've really been drawn to both of them. Like I haven't needed convincing to focus on them. So
Yeah. Well, where can people hear your show? Is it live on LinkedIn? I know you have a Twitter handle, LogTech Eric.
Yep.
So make sure you follow him on Twitter, everybody, LogTech Eric, and YouTube. But where is your show on YouTube? Is it on LinkedIn? Where do you?
Yeah, you can restream it on my feed, on my Twitter feed. It's on LinkedIn. It's through the Let's Talk Supply Chain network. So
nice.
If you go to Let's Talk Supply Chain, I think / LogTech Live, you can watch archived episodes in the new episode.
Yeah. Sarah Barnes Humphrey. She's awesome.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. That's great. That's awesome. I'm glad you're getting to do that. Yeah, because I'm kind of I wouldn't call myself a log tech connoisseur, but I'm fascinated by it. And I sold it for a long time. I started DAT and was at Port TMS as a Trucker Tools and got to see several different things, lean tech and all that.
Well, you can't say you're not a technology guy. So
well, I'm kind of a tech guy. I'm not a developer. I always sold it.
I'm the same way. I'm writing about it. I couldn't code my way out of a paper
you don't want me coding. I mean, Chat GPT is probably the closest I'll ever get to coding something at this point. Is a good prompt into that. But I'm fascinated by technology and what it can do. And just all the whole process about that, and especially our industry because it's so fragmented and archaic in many ways. So it's really interesting to see who's going to win out in this in this game that we're watching happen in real time. So I'm kind of the same way. I've got my show called The Edge. I've got log tech companies on to display what they're doing. Navix being one of them. By the way, I gotta give a shout out. This is one of the nicest pieces of swag. Just got it yesterday. Shout out to my friends over at Navix. That's a whole sidebar, folks. If you got swag, it's got to be good. All right, make sure it's well designed, it's high quality, and it's functional. People will use it just like this. So
don't waste.
I'm a big swag fan. What was that?
Don't waste your money on bad swag.
No, bad. It's better to have no swag than bad swag. It says something about your company. It says something to your brand. So, anyways, that's a sidebar, nonetheless. But yeah, so logistics tech to me is really, really exciting. What are you seeing right now that has you really excited when you look at the tech that's out there for primarily like for freight brokers, for shippers, and for carriers? What's really moving the needle from your opinion?
Yeah, so it's interesting you phrase it as like what gets me excited. I think it's almost immaterial what I think is exciting. What I try to do is act as a prism for the companies that I write for and talk to. So all those groups that you mentioned on the domestic and international side, I probably split my time writing and talking to people, half on the domestic side and half on the freight forwarding, ocean and air.
Yeah, international.
Because there's interesting stuff going on both sides, and sometimes it overlaps and other times it doesn't. But really, I just want to make everyone has now been thrust into this like discovery role around technology. Like you can't ever stop thinking about what technology is relevant to your business or your day to day. So I just wake up every morning and go, how can I like explain this really confusing world to people so that it's a little bit easier for them to make calls on? That's the way I sort of think about my job. So from that perspective, the things that I am hearing the most about it, I think everybody, you mentioned Chat GPT. I would broaden that out, right? Chat GPT is this little
one segment of it, right?
Interesting, but like little corner of automation and AI that every person in the world that has the ability to touch, but there's so much out there that like no one would ever even come across. So I think automation in general is probably the most important thing that I'm covering these days, but it's such a huge, big, like malleable subject that it's hard to just say, oh, I'm going to write about automation today. Well, what do you mean? Are you going to write about RPA type stuff? Are you going to write about, the chatbots and generative AI? Are you going to write about like intelligent automation where a system is not just guiding someone or providing suggestions, but is actually making a decision about going with a carrier or choosing a route or switching a mode? So that stuff is it's sort of, I call it like the anti-blockchain, in that it's happening, it's in play already, it will grow, it's real stuff, it's not hype. There is hype around it, but it's not purely hype.
And it's kind of the Wild West. I mean, there's a lot
Totally.
of people just trying to figure stuff out, throwing stuff against the wall, trying new things. I mean, I'm thinking about it from a marketing perspective and from a podcasting perspective, how I can utilize it. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about the possibilities. There's some things we've done. We've been playing around with some stuff, and I know there's a lot of other people doing the same thing. There's so many uses for it. It's crazy. It's really going to open things up.
I think you have one group who's maybe legitimately concerned about what it means to like their livelihood, and then you have another group who maybe if they were smart or paranoid would be concerned, but they're embracing it and they're thinking, how does this help me? How does this help me stay relevant? How does this make me maybe a better employee? And you don't have a bunch of people. Everybody in the middle is just kind of like, not even paying attention really. So,
right.
And so I think it's really incumbent on people to think about how to utilize it rather than just think, oh, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and hope it doesn't displace what I do.
Right. I agree.
It's like any like technical revolution, right? It will change things. It won't, like industrial equipment in the end of the 1800s didn't stop people from needing to do jobs. It just changed the jobs.
Jobs. That's absolutely right. Yep. I think about that from my perspective. We do a lot with messaging and things like that. I mean, I've just seen already how GPT can help prompt or help start an article, but doesn't necessarily mean the whole article. It kind of gets some of the juices flowing, or like, hey, give me 5 different social media posts on this topic, and kind of pick the one you like, and then tweak it and personalize it. It just helps you be a little more efficient and effective, and that's going to happen. I'm excited for the day that I can literally hit a button on my computer, and then Siri will pop up, and I'll say, hey, go book me a flight to Orlando with my Southwest account, and it just like stuff like that. I can't wait for that kind of stuff. I can't wait.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
And how efficient can you be? Because right now it takes me 10 minutes, 15 minutes to book a flight, but literally if I could talk it in and it gets done, there's 15 minutes I just saved on that, and 15 here and 15 there.
I agree. I think it's like, so, as an example on the ChatGPT thing, or I won't call it ChatGPT because there's so many.
OpenAI, AI in general. Yeah.
Or just language learning models.
Yes.
Is the way that engineers sometimes refer to them. And I had someone who works at a TMS provider, very well-known, broadly used TMS provider, who said he's got 100 engineers on his team. He estimates that they can code stuff 10 to 30% faster using those language models, just because they're filling out code that's sort of rote code, right? Like, just like, it's not like every piece of code is like something brand new that someone is coming up with. It's just the same as like putting
these blocks together, and
any other mindless activity that we're supposed to do at work. Like, there's that part of it. So he said, essentially, I can get about 20 new engineers for about $1,000 a year each, right? So it's that kind of stuff that may be totally imperceptible to someone in a truck or someone at a transportation planner. Just the fact that their software provider is working 20% faster and cheaper. Those are the kinds of benefits that I think you need to think about. Not, oh, the robot's just going to wipe out those 100 engineers. No, this guy was like, we have a deficit of engineers. We don't have enough engineers for all the world's need for code. So
I think going to take those 100 engineers and make them act like 150, right? And like get more done. I mean, that's how it's going to work. And it's not like we're going to slow down on technology production or software production. Everything's just continually becoming software and software. So the needs are not going to slow down. I don't see that happening anytime soon. So
no, I don't either.
A lot of good stuff. Okay, we got to pause for a second, Eric, because every day on the show we like to do a couple things. First of all, we like to celebrate the National Day, and I assume you might be able to guess what today's National Day is. It's one of the more popular ones.
With you, right?
It is that day, so it's. Well, I think we might have a video about this. Do we have a video? We There you go. It is. Are you a Star Wars fan?
I am. Yeah, I did this.
All of them, the prequels, the sequels, everything.
There's the prequels are okay. I don't have like the hatred for them that some people have, but I don't feel compelled to watch them. Maybe the third one. The third one's pretty dark. I like the third one. Uh,
Pretty dark.
yeah, I mean, Return and is amazing. I
Yeah.
know it's cliche, but like that's where everything gets real. And so yeah, I mean, on the walk to school today, I did I'm Your Father, just to celebrate.
Yes, very good. Well
Yeah,
done. Well done.
my
Yeah,
son.
so it's National Star Wars Day. Sometimes they're funny days. This is a legit one. This is a good one. So for all the Star Wars people out there, and I've never gotten into the bitterness between Star Wars and Star Trek fans. Like, can't you like both? I
I
mean,
don't
isn't
either.
that kind of
I'm not a huge Star Trek fan, but I don't hate it, and I don't understand why people hate one or the
I
other.
don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of cultish and the conferences and all that. But anyways, to each his own, I guess, is what we'll say on that. But anyways, National Star Wars Day, everybody. Enjoy that. May the 4th be with you. And then the other thing, Eric, we like to do from time to time is we like to have a random question of the day. Now, listen, I haven't seen this question. I don't know if it's any good or if it's going to be funny or serious or if it's just going to be a dud. Who knows? But we like to celebrate it. So today's today's random question of the day is. Okay, this is a good question. What was your favorite childhood book? Were you a reader growing up?
That's a good question for a journalist, and right.
That is a good question, actually. Yeah.
Sorry, my dog is going crazy. Dog liked that question, I guess. Ooh, favorite childhood book. So I guess the one that sticks out most. I don't know if this is child. I always
lost your sound. I lost your sound for a moment. Move your hands.
sorry.
All good.
Yeah.
There you are. Now you're back. There you go.
I would say Of Mice and Men. For some reason, that one always stuck out
okay.
in my head, as I always like vividly remember reading it and being like, thinking back to like. Do you remember that book, Lenny?
Yeah, no, I didn't read that book. I know I was supposed to, but it never happened. Listen,
There were lots of books I was supposed to read that I did not read.
You and I are on different tracks because when I'm thinking about my favorite childhood book, I'm literally thinking Clifford the Big Red Dog. Like that's
okay. So
big fan.
Okay,
Charlotte's Web, maybe.
Is it
big fan of Charlotte's Web.
Like real childhood? I remember there was this book that my mom read me that was I think they got it in England, and it was about Big Ben, and it was about clocks.
Oh, okay.
And I remember it was like the clock talk,
Yeah.
around the clock talks and there's ticks and talks and that sort of thing. So I vividly remember that book as well. If we're talking real childhood books, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not childhood.
I think Charlotte's Web might be my first like somewhat legitimate book that I enjoyed reading. But I was that kid. So Eric, you probably remember those kids. I was that kid that would come in and be like, "Hey, what was that book about last night?" Or "What was that story about?" that was me. That was me. There's always got to be one of us, and that was me.
I was just really good at taking whatever I did read and like making it seem like I read more than I had. So
yeah, well, I was really good at talking about it as if I'd read it because this is my thing. I can just talk up a storm and kind of sound like I knew what I was talking about. I didn't start reading books for real on my own until my senior year of high school. A girl that I was dating was like, "You should read this John Grisham book," and I was like, "Oh, you're so pretty. I'll read it." Okay, and so I read which one? I read The Firm.
Yeah,
John Grisham, The Firm. That was the first one I read, and I was actually pretty captivated by that. And a couple Michael Crichton books I read, Congo, and a few others. And I was like, "Oh, this is actually kind of fun." So
I got it. Congo. I remember my dad had Congo and Andromeda Strain and Terminal Man and all those.
Yeah.
Those are great.
Yeah, so there was very little reading until my senior year of high school. Very little reading. It was more like, is there a movie on this or something? Can I get some notes from somebody?
It was hard for me to read while I was shooting hoops outside.
Exactly. I mean, I don't have time for that kind of stuff,
So.
You're a hooper? Play some ball?
Yeah, until I stopped growing. Yeah.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'8". So
I'm 5'8" too. You look taller than me in this video, but I'm 5'8" as well.
My last name's Johnson. I grew up in LA. I just presumed I was going to replace Magic.
It was meant to be.
I was going to replace Magic as the Lakers point guard, but yeah,
didn't quite work out.
Somehow I came up with a backup plan. So
didn't quite work out. Okay, well, that was a good question. That was a good random question, especially for a journalist. So well done. That was a good question. All right, listen, I got to ask you about this because this is somewhat of a tech thing and somewhat of a legal thing. Yep. Do you have a take on what's happening right now with this DAT convoy legal dispute? What are your thoughts on this from a law tech perspective?
This is an interesting one. So I don't have a strong take on like the sort of moral questions that I sort of see floating out there. I know that, or I understand. I don't honestly have a lot of brokers coming to me going, I hate DATs. Like those conversations don't happen with me. They may be happening elsewhere or with other people, but no one calls me complaining about DAT. Um, I, I I should say I'm utterly dispassionate about however this case turns out. I cover both of those companies. I have good relationships with both of them. Um, I am not a legal expert, so I turn to people like Matt Leffler, who helps me understand what the heck is going on a legal proceeding.
Legit. Yep.
Who actually understands what these words mean. So my job is to help people understand like what the two sides are arguing about and where it may be going. But I'm not in any position to really have a strong take on like the long-term impact. I know this is not the most exciting answer, but I really
this is like the actual journalist answer.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't
really...
want to get into like I hope someone wins and I hope they don't win, because that's not I don't have those feelings anyway, and that's not my job to say that, right? My job is to like report what's happening and what might happen if X happens and if Y happens. So
you know what's really sad, Eric? You're doing it the right way, but we don't even hear this kind of talk anymore from the news organizations of like trying to stay somewhat in the middle and just report. This is refreshing, but
it's hard. Look, we all have opinions. Like for me to say that I do not have opinions on things is wrong, but it's not about whether or not you have opinions. It's can you put those aside and report to people so that they are not influenced one way or another by those opinions, right? So yeah, I mean I'm aware that DAT has somewhat of a strong position in the market as it relates to load boards, and I'm aware that there are some issues that people have with the data and the loads that people get on DAT, but as far as I'm aware, they are not like tying people down and waterboarding them until they like sign up, right? Like
haven't gone that far yet that we know of.
There are nothing, if not options, on the market to do just about anything right now, right? We were talking about the internet at the outset, and one thing the internet has done is it's super confusing, but like the options are almost unlimited for whatever you want to do if you do the work, do the research. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Now, the judge is going to make decisions based on the interesting thing. And my mom is a lawyer. I'm surrounded by lawyers. Matt has walked me through this as well. The judge is going to make a determination based on what the two legal teams present, not necessarily what those of us in the real world think is happening. Right. So it's really like what is presented in the courtroom or in those documents. It's not necessarily what we think should happen. So,
so true. How good are the lawyers? How good are the lawyers and what kind of argument do they make? I think this is true. I had, when I was in college, I was an education major, and in one of my classes, it was education law, and they gave us access to all the Supreme Court audio recordings. So we got to listen. So I went back and I listened to some of these landmark cases, and truthfully, some of the Supreme Court cases that were decided, I could not believe how bad one of the lawyers was in presenting their argument versus how good, and that's what happened, right? Personally, my parents divorced when I was 7. My dad, who at the time was an alcoholic who smoked cigarettes, who had trouble keeping a job, he won custody of my daughter and I over my mom, who had a job, very responsible. And it was because of the lawyers. It was because of the arguments that were presented. You're absolutely right. It may have nothing to do with the actual merit of the case. It's going to have to do with the ability of the lawyers to present their arguments precisely. And now you're a journalist. I'm not a journalist. I have a different take. I used to work at DAT, right? Yeah. I know what those agreements look like and the exclusivity that they offer for a discount. That's what it is. It's for a discount. And I can tell you that I've had many people tell me they hate DAT when I was working there. I used to go to a broker and they would say, we hate working with you, but we have to. So let's sit down and talk. And I was like, well, thank you for having me today. Like, this is such a weird sales call.
I have a blog, or I have a newsletter that I put out sporadically. I used to do it every week, but I put it out sporadically now. And one I wrote is every company aspires to be the company that everybody hates. Because if everybody hates you, that means everyone's using you. Because at some point, you'll always find something wrong with somebody that you rely upon. Right? And so I think DAT is in that position where they're sort of in a no-win situation because it's like,
yeah. Well, it's interesting because like to go along with that, a team that always wins, people eventually start hating them because
sure,
they're always winning, right? So there's
paths,
something about
right?
that. And I think that, the thing about DAT that's really interesting is it's so hard to create a load board or a digital freight matching platform because you have to have critical mass of carriers and brokers equally. You
Right.
can't outweigh one or the other. And so building it takes time, and they were first in the market, and they had, I mean, they're still benefiting from first to market,
Sure.
principles on that.
Yeah.
But what I think is really interesting is I do think that the sentiment has gone negative because of what I've heard, which is them canceling contracts and just issuing a new contract with a 50% price increase and no negotiation, like take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And that type of sentiment, I feel like they're ripe to be disrupted. It's just so hard to disrupt. Nobody's been able to really do it. It's an interesting situation.
Totally fair. Totally fair. And I think their business is like, there's enough wrinkles in their business where you can take what's going on in this case and other stuff that obviously I hear rumors and things like that as well. And, say, how related are these things, right? So, it will be interesting to watch. I'll leave it at that. Is like, I'm fascinated to see where this case goes because it's obviously important and interesting. However it's decided.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's a good way to think of it. It is going to be interesting. We'll just have to, I guess we'll have to kind of see how it plays itself out, So that's kind of, well, Eric, listen, hey, it's been fabulous having you on the show today. Thank you for stopping by and telling us about your life in the Journal of Commerce world, writing about all this stuff. Hope to have you back on soon. We can talk more about LogTech. That'd be great.
That'd be awesome. Thanks so much, Trey. This has been awesome.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right, everybody, listen, we're going to have another great series of shows next week, but don't forget tomorrow, noon Central, Word on the Street with our good friend Dan Lindsay of Linkage Logistics. We're going to be talking about his new conference called the Broker Carrier Summit coming up here in October. It's going to be great, so we'll see you then. Until next time, shout out to our sponsor, SPI Logistics. Learn more about them at success.spi3pl.com, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Peace out, everybody.